I was the firstborn, Samantha Parker. And for a while, I thought that meant something. When I was little, I used to think love was something you earned. That if I got the best grades, followed every rule, cleaned my room without being asked, then maybe, just maybe, my parents would look at me the way they looked at Jessica, my younger sister. Jessica was born with this glow. It's hard to describe unless you've seen it yourself. Some kids walk into a room and everyone just turns to them smiling, drawn in like they're the sun. That was Jessica. She had these golden curls, this laugh that made strangers compliment her in grocery stores. And my mother, she lit up around her like she was the only child she ever wanted. I remember one Christmas, Jessica must have been 5 and I was 7. I asked for a dollhouse. I wrote it on my list, circled it in red, even cut it out of a catalog. I got socks and a book about responsibility. Jessica got the dollhouse, the exact one I'd asked for. My mom said, "Well, sweetie, Jessica will share it with you. You're such a good big sister. I know you'll understand." That's the kind of love I got. The kind that came with conditions. The kind that said, be understanding, be patient, be quiet, be less. It wasn't just about gifts either. It was praise, attention, warmth. When I brought home straight A's, my mom would say, "Good job," without even looking up from folding laundry. But if Jessica got a B in math, there was ice cream to celebrate how hard she tried. And Jessica, she knew what she was to them. She wasn't cruel, not exactly. But she had this way of slipping into my space like it belonged to her. My favorite sweater. She wore it to school without asking. My birthday jewelry from Grandma. Jessica borrowed it and lost it the same day. She once flirted with a guy I liked in 8th grade, just to see if she could get his attention. She did. I tried to talk to my mom about it once. I said I don't think Jessica should go through my stuff. She sighed and said, "You always overreact. Don't be so jealous, Sam. She looks up to you." That was the line. Every time Jessica crossed a line, I was the problem for not accepting it with grace. Eventually, I stopped bringing things up. What was the point? Being hurt just made me look petty. My mother had this subtle way of making me feel like I was never enough, but also too much at the same time. Too serious, too sensitive, too cold. I learned to hold things in, not just anger, but joy too. Celebrating myself felt dangerous. If I got too proud, someone would remind me to tone it down, that there was always someone else who deserved the spotlight more. By the time I hit high school, I had walls up so high you could barely see me. I didn't bring friends over. I didn't date much. I focused on school scholarships, planning my way out. I wanted freedom, not just from my parents, but from the version of myself they had shaped, the one who apologized for taking up space. I got a full ride to college out of state. I remember my dad being proud in his quiet way, but my mom just asked, "Why so far away?" Jessica cried. I think she actually believed we were close in that house. Love wasn't something I felt. It was something I had to chase. And no matter how fast or far I ran, I never caught it. What I did catch was a sense of silence. A deep, exhausting quiet inside myself. I was tired of trying to win people over. Tired of proving I was worthy. Tired of pretending that being second didn't hurt. I've carried that with me into adulthood, whether I wanted to or not. It shaped how I trust people. How I open up or don't. How I wait for the other shoe to drop, even when things are going well. Because I was taught early that love can be taken. That it can be given to someone else, right in front of you. And you're expected to clap for it. I spent years trying to earn love in that house, but eventually I stopped trying. And I left ... The first year of our marriage was exactly what I'd hoped for. Quiet, steady, safe. Kyle and I had a rhythm. Sunday grocery runs, Wednesday night takeout. We'd lie in bed and talk about nothing, until one of us fell asleep mid-sentence. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. And after everything I'd grown up with, that was more than enough. But somewhere along the way, that rhythm started to change. It was subtle at first. He started working late, sometimes once or twice a week, then more. At dinner, he was distracted. His eyes were on his phone more than on me. He'd smile less. Talk less. When I asked how work was going, he'd say fine, then shift the conversation away before I could press further. He started placing his phone face down on the counter. I caught him deleting texts once, said it was to clear up space. That excuse hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to ask more questions, but I didn't want to come off as insecure. The old voice in my head started whispering again. Don't overreact, don't be jealous, don't push him away. One evening, he came home smelling like someone else. Not cologne or aftershave. Perfume, sweet, floral, unfamiliar. I froze for a second when I hugged him, then pulled away too fast. He didn't seem to notice. Said the office had a client party. Said people were hugging goodbye. I wanted to believe him. Then, a week later, I was hanging his coat when I spotted it. A single long blonde hair on the collar. Jessica's shade. I stood there, holding that hair between my fingers, willing myself not to spiral. There were other explanations. Blonde women existed in the world. Maybe someone brushed past him. Maybe it was a coworker or a friend of a client. I told myself all the logical things. But my gut screamed. Still, I said nothing. I knew what people would think, that I was paranoid, that I was overreacting again. I had spent my whole life being cast as the jealous sister, the one who couldn't stand Jessica's spotlight. If I accused her of something like this, with no proof, I'd only be confirming what my family always believed about me. So instead, I blamed myself. I started questioning everything. Was I too quiet lately? Too focused on work? Was I giving Kyle the attention he needed? Maybe I wasn't being affectionate enough. Maybe I was slipping into old habits, shutting down, putting up walls. I even booked us a weekend getaway to a cabin up north. I planned hikes, packed board games, picked a bottle of wine I knew he loved. He seemed happy, relaxed even. But when we got home, nothing changed. If anything, he seemed even more distant. One Thursday evening, he texted that he'd be working late again. Don't wait up, he added. Something about that rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't the words, it was the tone. Cold, dismissive, like I was an obligation, not a partner. On a whim, I called his office. Hi, I said cheerfully. Is Kyle around? There was a pause. Then the receptionist said, oh, he left a little after 5. Said he had dinner plans. I didn't even hang up right away. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding. My face felt hot. My hands were trembling, but not from surprise. From confirmation. He lied, he didn't even bother to make it complicated. I stared at the clock. It was 7:12 p.m. He wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. I stood in the middle of our living room, watching the light shift on the hardwood floors. There was a half-empty glass of water on the table, a pair of his sneakers by the door, the scent of his cologne still clinging to the air. And suddenly, I didn't feel like I lived there. I didn't find what I was expecting. No romantic messages, no suspicious subject lines, but I found something else. A shift, a strange pattern. New accounts, password resets, deleted histories. It wasn't proof, but it was a trail. And for the first time, I stopped questioning my instincts. I didn't know what I'd uncover, but I knew I had a reason to keep digging. I felt like I was visiting someone else's life that night. I waited until he fell asleep on the couch, TV still flickering in the background. Then I took his laptop into the kitchen, opened it slowly, and started checking his email. The first year of our marriage was exactly what I'd hoped for. Quiet, steady, safe. Kyle and I had a rhythm. Sunday grocery runs, Wednesday night takeout. We'd lie in bed and talk about nothing until one of us fell asleep, mid-sentence. It wasn't perfect, but it felt real. And after everything I'd grown up with, that was more than enough. But somewhere along the way, that rhythm started to change. It was subtle at first. He started working late, sometimes once or twice a week, then more. At dinner, he was distracted. His eyes were on his phone more than on me. He'd smile less, talk less. When I asked how work was going, he'd say fine, then shift the conversation away before I could press further. He started placing his phone face down on the counter. I caught him deleting texts once, said it was to clear up space. That excuse hung in the air like smoke. I wanted to ask more questions, but I didn't want to come off as insecure. The old voice in my head started whispering again, don't overreact, don't be jealous, don't push him away. One evening, he came home smelling like someone else. Not cologne or aftershave. Perfume. Sweet. Floral. Unfamiliar. I froze for a second when I hugged him, then pulled away too fast. He didn't seem to notice. Said the office had a client party. Said people were hugging goodbye. I wanted to believe him. Then, a week later, I was hanging his coat when I spotted it. A single long blonde hair on the collar. Jessica's shade. I stood there, holding that hair between my fingers, willing myself not to spiral. There were other explanations. Blonde women existed in the world. Maybe someone brushed past him. Maybe it was a coworker, or a friend of a client. I told myself all the logical things. But my gut screamed. Still, I said nothing. I knew what people would think, that I was paranoid, that I was overreacting again. I had spent my whole life being cast as the jealous sister, the one who couldn't stand Jessica's spotlight. If I accused her of something like this, with no proof, I'd only be confirming what my family always believed about me. So instead, I blamed myself. I started questioning everything. Was I too quiet lately? Too focused on work? Was I giving Kyle the attention he needed? Maybe I wasn't being affectionate enough. Maybe I was slipping into old habits, shutting down, putting up walls. I even booked us a weekend getaway to a cabin up north. I planned hikes, packed board games, picked a bottle of wine I knew he loved. He seemed happy, relaxed even, but when we got home, nothing changed. If anything, he seemed even more distant. One Thursday evening, he texted that he'd be working late again. "Don't wait up," he added. Something about that rubbed me the wrong way. It wasn't the words, it was the tone. Cold, dismissive, like I was an obligation, not a partner. On a whim, I called his office. "Hi," I said cheerfully. "Is Kyle around?" There was a pause. Then the receptionist said, "Oh, he left a little after 5. Said he had dinner plans." I didn't even hang up right away. I just sat there, phone pressed to my ear, heart pounding. My face felt hot. My hands were trembling, but not from surprise. From confirmation, he lied. He didn't even bother to make it complicated. I stared at the clock. It was 7:12 p.m. He wouldn't be home for another 2 hours. I stood in the middle of our living room, watching the light shift on the hardwood floors. There was a half-empty glass of water on the table, a pair of his sneakers by the door, the scent of his cologne still clinging to the air, and suddenly I didn't feel like I lived there. I felt like I was visiting someone else's life that night. I waited until he fell asleep on the couch, TV still flickering in the background. Then I took his laptop into the kitchen, opened it slowly, and started checking his email. I didn't find what I was expecting. No romantic messages, no suspicious subject lines. But I found something else. A shift. A strange pattern. New accounts, password resets, deleted histories. It wasn't proof. But it was a trail. And for the first time, I stopped questioning my instincts. I didn't know what I'd uncover, but I knew. I had a reason to keep digging. My 32nd birthday was supposed to be quiet. I didn't want a party or a surprise or anything over the top. I just wanted one evening that felt calm, clean, something that reminded me why I married Kyle in the first place. After the past few months of tension, I told myself we needed a moment to reconnect, to breathe. So I made a dinner reservation at Merlot, a sleek little restaurant tucked in the corner of downtown. It was the kind of place where the lighting was low, the food came in small portions, and you could hear real conversation over the clink of wine glasses. Just me, Kyle, and my parents. Simple. That was the plan anyway. But then my mom called. "I hope you don't mind," she said, already knowing I would, but I invited Jessica. It just didn't feel right not having your sister there. I wanted to say no. I almost did. But it was always easier to keep the peace, especially with my mother. So I forced a smile into my voice and said, "Okay." I spent more time getting ready than I usually did. I put on a navy blue dress Kyle had complimented once, pulled my hair into soft waves, and even wore the earrings my dad had given me years ago. One of the rare gifts that had felt like it was just for me. I told myself tonight would be a turning point, a step toward normal again. Kyle picked at his shirt collar the whole drive over. He didn't offer much conversation, just stared out the window and said, "You look nice," without looking at me. Inside the restaurant, my parents were already seated. My dad stood to hug me. My mom gave me an air kiss and immediately launched into small talk. Something about her friend's new dog and a neighbor's retirement. No Jessica yet. We ordered drinks. I tried to keep the conversation moving. I even reached for Kyle's hand under the table once. He held it, but it felt loose, distant. Then, 20 minutes in, I heard the door open behind me, and my mother's face lit up like Christmas morning. Jessica? She was dressed in white, flowing silk like she thought she was walking a red carpet. Her hand was looped through the arm of the man I married. Kyle. They walked in slowly like they wanted to be seen. I didn't move. I didn't say a word. Jessica took the seat directly across from me, Kyle beside her. The air in the room shifted tighter, heavier. My dad looked confused. My mom clapped her hands like this was a fun surprise. Sorry we're late, Jessica said, smoothing her dress. Traffic was a mess and, well, I needed a minute before we shared our news. She paused. No one asked for clarification. No one needed to. Jessica smiled wide, placed a hand gently over her stomach, and said the words that would split my world in half. I'm pregnant, and Kyle's the father. The room went still. For a moment I thought maybe I'd imagined it, that my brain had distorted the sound, twisted it into something cruel. But no, my mother gasped, hands over her mouth, eyes shining, a grandchild. She whispered like it was the best birthday gift she could have hoped for. My dad looked like someone had hit him. Kyle didn't meet my eyes. He stared at the table, mumbled, I'm sorry, Sam. I didn't mean for this to happen. Jessica stayed calm, her voice light, almost playful. It wasn't planned, but it's real. We're in love. ... I stared at them, the two of them side by side, like they belonged together. Like none of me mattered. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't flip the table or storm out or make a scene. Instead, I picked up my wine glass, took a slow sip, let the taste settle on my tongue, and then I smiled. It wasn't a polite smile. It wasn't warm. It was the kind of smile you give when someone thinks they've won something you were never trying to keep. I leaned forward, looked right at Jessica, and said calmly, You're right, you're pregnant, ... She smirked. Like she thought I was about to congratulate her. I set my glass down, but the baby's not his. Jessica blinked like she hadn't heard me right. Like the words didn't make sense. The baby's not his, I repeated. This time louder, clearer, enough that even the server paused as he passed by. Kyle finally looked up, his face drained of color. His mouth opened like he wanted to speak, but no sound came out. Just guilt. Thick, heavy guilt. I didn't flinch. I didn't even raise my voice. But everything inside me, months of doubt, of silence, of second-guessing myself, began to lift. I didn't say anything sooner, I said, turning my gaze to Kyle, because I wanted you both to have your moment. I wanted you to feel proud of what you've done. Jessica's hand was still on her stomach, but now her fingers had curled, tense and unsure. You see, I continued. Kyle and I made a decision 2 years ago. A grown-up, practical decision. We weren't ready for kids. Financially, emotionally, it just didn't make sense. I looked at him hard. And so, you got a vasectomy. My mother gasped loud like I had cursed in church. Jessica's head jerked toward Kyle. What? Kyle's jaw tightened. He looked like he was about to be sick. I wasn't going to say anything, I went on. Even when I started noticing the signs late nights, the phone turned over. Your sudden business dinners. I told myself I was imagining it, that maybe I was just being the jealous sister again, that old narrative. Jessica looked like she was shrinking. Her confidence, her smug little smirk from earlier, had vanished. But then I said I found the emails. I reached into my purse and placed a slim folder on the table. I didn't open it, didn't need to, but I saw Jessica's eyes lock onto it like it was a ticking bomb, because that's exactly what it was. You two weren't exactly careful. The subject lines were practically confessionals. I miss your body, can't wait until next weekend. Cute little pet names. Digital receipts from hotel rooms. Romantic dinner bookings. Kyle put his hands on the table, as if to steady himself. Sam, I'm not finished, I said, cutting him off. My voice didn't shake. Jessica's face had gone ghost. I hired a private investigator. He followed you, took photos, collected receipts, confirmed everything. I leaned back, finally calm/centered. I knew for 3 months, and I said nothing. Because I wanted this. I gestured around the table right here. I wanted you to tell everyone. I wanted you to expose yourselves, just like you always wanted the spotlight, Jess. Jessica was staring at her plate, her lip trembling. My mother looked like she wanted to melt into the floor. My father hadn't moved. Then Jessica whispered, I didn't know. About the vasectomy. I nodded slowly. I believe that. Her eyes flicked to Kyle, desperate, searching for something. And then came the last crack in her voice. Almost inaudible, but enough. It might be someone else's, she admitted. Another guy. I wasn't sure, but Kyle, he was supposed to be the safe one. My mother let out a shaky breath. Jessica, what did you do? But Jessica didn't answer. She just stared at the folder on the table like it was judging her. I looked at both of them, my sister and my husband, and said clearly, I've already filed for divorce. Kyle's head snapped up. I moved the money, I added. My accounts, my savings, everything. You won't touch a dollar of it. Sam, he said, reaching across the table. Please, can we talk? Just us. I pulled my hand back. You made your choices. You will not ruin me. My mother stood up halfway, panicked. Okay, that's enough. Let's not do this here. This is your birthday. Double quotes. I turned to her. No, Mom, this isn't my birthday. That ended the minute you let her take over my table, my night, and tried to make me small again. Double quotes. She didn't know how to respond. She just looked at me like she didn't recognize me. And maybe she didn't. I turned to my father. He still hadn't said a word. He didn't look angry, just tired, sad, like he was finally seeing something he'd avoided for too long. Jessica was quietly crying now. Kyle sat in silence, like the air had been knocked out of him. I pushed my chair back, stood up, smoothed the fabric of my dress, and without another word, I walked out. I didn't look back. I didn't go home that night. I had packed a small overnight bag weeks earlier, just in case. A change of clothes, a toothbrush, a copy of my legal documents in a zipped folder. I booked a room at a mid-range hotel across town, one with crisp white sheets and thick blackout curtains. It wasn't luxurious, but it was clean, quiet, and most importantly mine. I didn't cry, not that night. I took a long shower, poured myself a glass of water from the minibar, and sat at the edge of the bed in silence. My phone lit up every few minutes. First Kyle, then Jessica, then my mother. Calls, texts, voicemails, emails, apologies, explanations, Bible verses. I didn't open any of them. The next morning, I met with Patricia, my attorney. She was sharp, composed, the kind of woman who wore glasses on a chain around her neck and never once checked her phone during our meeting. She had everything prepared: divorce, petition, financial separation forms, the compiled PI report. She slid the papers toward me. You don't have to read every line, she said gently, but I encourage you to. You've earned the right to know exactly what you're walking away from. I signed them slowly, hand steady. It didn't feel dramatic. It felt like closing a door that had been creaking open for far too long. By noon, I'd blocked Kyle's number, then Jessica's, then my mother's. I didn't need to read her forwarded devotionals about grace and family unity. Not right now. Not after everything. I moved into my new apartment that weekend. A second-floor walk-up with creaky floors and chipped baseboards. But the light was good. Big windows that let the afternoon sun spill across the hardwood. I painted the walls a soft gray blue, hauled in a second-hand couch, and bought mismatched dishes on purpose. I left the old furniture behind. I didn't want any of it, not the bed Kyle and I had shared. Not the kitchen table where Jessica once toasted to our engagement. I wanted a clean space. One I could fill with whatever came next. I stood in the middle of that empty living room the first night and whispered to no one, "This is mine." It felt sacred, like a declaration. Megan came by the next day with takeout and a bottle of red wine. She didn't say much, just handed me a plastic fork, kicked off her shoes, and sat on the floor with me. We ate in silence for a while, the kind of silence that felt like safety, not tension. And then, somewhere between the second glass and the dumb joke about me finally learning to hang a shelf, I laughed. Really laughed. That full-bodied, surprised kind of laugh that shakes something loose in your chest. Then I cried. Not a breakdown, not hysterics. just a few tears that slid out before I could catch them. Megan didn't say a word. She just leaned her head on my shoulder and kept chewing her noodles. At work, things settled into routine. I didn't tell anyone what had happened, but word travels. My coworkers tiptoed around me the first week, unsure of what to say. Except David. David worked in the design department, a quiet guy who always brought his lunch in a plain black thermos. We'd never talked much before, but that week he started dropping by my desk, not with questions or small talk, just little things. One morning he left a small plant with a sticky note that said, "New Roots." Another day, a playlist link titled Mellow Mornings. No expectations, no pity, just kindness. I started therapy that month. I didn't tell my parents. I didn't tell anyone except Megan. It wasn't about fixing something. It was about unpacking it, naming things, giving weight to all the little hurts I had ignored for years, and I started journaling again. Nothing profound. Some days I just wrote what I ate for breakfast, but it helped. It reminded me that I existed, that I had a voice, that my story mattered, even if no one else had ever paused long enough to hear it. Weeks passed, the noise died down, the texts stopped. At least the ones that got past the blocks. And for the first time in a long time, I felt still not happy. Exactly, but still. And that was something. Then one night I came home late after work. The hallway was dim, the air humid from a summer rain. As I turned the corner near my building, I stopped short. Jessica was sitting on the front steps, alone, pregnant, crying. She looked small sitting there, shoulders hunched, hair damp from the rain, clinging to her cheek. She had that same white cardigan she used to wear in high school, the one she swore made her look soft and safe. For a moment, I just stood there. Jessica saw me, stood up too quickly, and winced as she balanced her weight. Her belly had grown, her eyes were puffy and red, but there was no makeup to hide behind this time, no smug smile, no show. "Please," she said, voice cracking. I need to talk." I said nothing. "I don't have anywhere else to go," she added quickly, as if that explained everything. "I'm not asking to come in. I just need 5 minutes, please." I nodded once. She didn't need to come inside. The porch was enough. We sat on the steps in silence. The streetlight above buzzed faintly. A car rolled past, music thumping low. It felt like the world was still turning, even though part of me had expected it to stop. "Kyle left," she said quietly. "A few weeks after your birthday, said he wasn't ready for all of this." I glanced over. "Is that what he told you?" She nodded. "He's seeing someone else. Someone from his gym, I think. Blonde, of course." I didn't flinch. I think she expected me to. "I'm scared, Sam." Her voice got smaller. "I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't told Mom. Not really. And Dad just keeps saying I'll be fine, but I'm not. I'm really not." I waited. "I know I don't deserve it, but I'm sorry," she said, finally turning to face me. "I didn't think it would go this far. I didn't mean to destroy everything." I looked at her, really looked. She wasn't the golden girl anymore. She wasn't glowing or laughing or stealing the room. She was just a scared woman in too much pain to hide it. But I didn't hug her. I didn't cry with her. I didn't wrap my arms around her and say, "It's okay," because it wasn't. "You always had this strength," Jessica whispered. "This calm I never understood. You didn't need people's approval the way I did. I hated how you made it look easy." I shook my head. "You think I had it easy?" "No," she said quickly. "I think you made it look like you didn't care, and I couldn't stand it. That's why I wanted what you had." I turned to her. "No, Jess, you didn't want what I had. You just didn't want me to have it." Her face crumpled at that. "I didn't know how to be your sister," she said. "I was too busy being what everyone else wanted me to be. And when that stopped working, I just started taking." She looked down at her hands resting on her belly. "This baby wasn't planned. It wasn't love. It was loneliness. I didn't even want Kyle. I just didn't want to be left behind." That line hit harder than I expected. I thought about our childhood, about the way she'd always needed to be seen, needed to be chosen, how my silence was her mirror, and maybe that terrified her. We sat for a long time. She didn't ask me to forgive her, and I didn't offer it eventually. She stood, wiped her face, and said, "Thanks for listening, double quotes, ... I nodded. "Take care of yourself, Jessica, and take care of that baby. Be better than they were." ... She walked away without another word. The next day, my mother called again. She'd left several voicemails since the birthday dinner, but I hadn't answered any of them. This time, I let it go to voicemail and listened later. Her voice was tight too, cheerful. "Your father and I think it would be good for everyone if we did family counseling. Heal some of these wounds. You and Jessica need to move past this." I didn't respond. A few days later, my father called. He didn't push, just said he missed me. Said he was sorry for not seeing things sooner. I believed him in a way I never expected to. Still, I didn't go to any sessions. Because I'd already decided I'm done performing family. We're not a family. We're survivors of the same dysfunction. That's not the same thing. I can love people from a distance. I can wish them healing without dragging myself back into the fire. A week later, a letter arrived. No return address. Just my name on the envelope in handwriting. I hadn't seen in years. Curved, loopy, uncertain. Inside was a single sheet of paper. Jessica's apology, her first real one. 1 year later, I woke up on my own. No alarm, no rushing. No voice in the back of my mind whispering, "Get up before someone needs something from you." Just soft light slipping through the blinds. The rustle of tree branches outside. The distant sound of life continuing, and for once, I wasn't trying to outrun it. I stretched under a comforter I chose, in a room I painted, in a home that felt, finally, like mine. The walls weren't filled with expensive furniture or curated decorations, but my plants were still alive. My bookshelf was full. There was a chipped mug on the nightstand that I used every morning because it reminded me of the first apartment where I started over. And I didn't feel empty. I felt steady. Work had changed too. I'd stepped into a leadership role a few months back. Project manager for a team that respected me, trusted me. I wasn't just keeping my head down and surviving anymore. I was speaking up, leading, growing. I surprised myself, honestly. David and I had grown closer, but in a way that didn't come with pressure or performance. It started with coffee breaks, then lunch, then the occasional Friday night movie at his place with takeout and mismatched socks. We didn't define it, we didn't rush it, but it was safe, warm, respectful. That was new for me. My mother and I hadn't spoken since that night. She still sent the occasional text holiday greetings, passive-aggressive articles about family forgiveness. I stopped reading them, not out of anger, out of preservation. My father called sometimes, not often, but enough. He didn't ask for more than I could give, just wanted to know I was okay. I think he was learning how to be a different kind of parent. It wasn't perfect, but it was honest. As for Jessica, she sent updates, photos of her baby girl, snippets about sleepless nights, tiny first smiles, moments of panic and joy and exhaustion. I didn't always reply, but when I did, I was kind. I didn't open the door, but I didn't slam it shut either. She had apologized truly, and I believed she meant it. But forgiveness for me wasn't an instant release. It was a boundary. A long, slow process of letting go without inviting the pain back in. And then came my 33rd birthday. I wasn't expecting anything. I had planned a quiet night in, maybe a good meal, and a favorite movie. But when I walked into Megan's apartment that evening, lights flicked on, and a small chorus of surprise filled the room. There were maybe 8 people, colleagues, friends, a few neighbors, and David standing in the back with a crooked smile and a bottle of wine. There was no drama, no grand announcement, just hugs, laughter, the clink of glasses, and a cake with my name spelled right across the top. When Megan handed me a slice and a plastic fork, I took a breath and felt it hit me all at once. This was my life now. Not a performance. Not a competition. Just peace. As we sat around, her dining table plates empty, music humming low in the background, I stood up slowly, glass in hand. Everyone turned to look, expecting something short, but I felt like speaking. I used to think birthdays were for measuring progress. I said, where you are, what you've accomplished, who's sitting at your table. And by that logic, last year was devastating. ... There were a few chuckles. David gave me a knowing look. But this year taught me something different. Sometimes, losing everything is how you find yourself. A pause, and I did. I lost a marriage, a version of my family, a part of my identity I'd been carrying around for too long. But what I gained was something I'd never had before. I looked around the room. No spotlight, no performance, just people who'd chosen to show up for me. Just me, fully in the moment. And I smiled. I found peace, and I found me. Everyone clinked glasses. Someone turned the music up. Megan lit candles, and someone started singing an off-key version of Happy Birthday. I laughed. For real. For the first time in years, I didn't feel like I was chasing healing. I was standing in it. And as I sat down and looked at the people around me, some new, some old, I realized that this was my real family. Not the ones tied to me by blood, but the ones who showed up in the aftermath and helped me rebuild. And in that quiet, certain way, I finally understood, they took my trust, they took my marriage, but they didn't take my strength. And I finally know that was never theirs to take.